The history of humanity, as I have said many times, you have experienced the duality in which you have breathed life into an illusion called fear. You have been surrounded, filled with, seduced by, blinded by fear. Always the ideal has been love, but an ideal seldom practiced and always practiced imperfectly. Your journey as human beings has been to find your way through that darkness of fear, back to the light of the only reality, the love, which is the energy of God. That has been your journey through these many years. Now the time has come for change. Now the time has come to dispel the illusion of fear, to make it disappear by withdrawing your power from it, the power of your false belief. It dissipates like a bad dream, leaving in its wake the only true reality, that oneness of God and of love, the end of human duality, the end of the journey back to light. Each of you in your own lives, having committed yourself to the search for truth and for wholeness and for oneness, has, with courage, sometimes reluctant courage, found your way through the valley of the shadow of your personal fears and into the light of forgiveness, the light of welcome of the Christ energy, the light that is the only true reality. This duality does not disappear from all. You who are the end and the beginning, the graduating class, and those beginning a new journey, who have exemplified the transition in your own lives through death of the ego, of the old self, of the belief in fear, into rebirth, into wholeness. You are among those who are at once completing the journey through the age of Pisces, the journey mapped for you by Jesus the Christ, and have found your way finally into that light and forever leaving the darkness behind. In this same world of yours have been many who have come increasingly under the thraldom of fear, who have increased their belief in darkness, who have lost their way in the shadow. As I've said before, these people aren't doomed. In my house are many mansions, many realities, many dimensions. For each human being, the time comes for the transformation into wholeness. For you, that time is now. You are the graduating class. For those others who have embraced the darkness with the desperation of their blindness, it is an end, but not a beginning. Never a final end, for there are no final endings. Life always goes on. Life is immortal. Death a part of the illusion. But insomuch as this earth, this reality, this humanity is concerned, there comes a parting of the ways. I spoke of this the very first time I spoke on this earth plane, a number of years ago now. I said 2 earths will divide. There will be 2 earths, one that goes onward into the light, one that destroys itself through its belief in the dark. This division, this schism, is taking place as I speak. It has been developing toward that separation for many years. But now, in this time, in this month, in this week, in this day, you are feeling, you are experiencing, and you will continue to do so, the separation that is the separation of that which is dying and the separation of that which is being born. You are among those who are being reborn. For you the cup of joy will fill to overflowing. For you the loss of your belief in fear fills you with love, with the energy of Christ, with the energy of transformation, with the triunity that is the end of the body-mind-spirit separation and the beginning of the new humanity. For you this is a time of triumph, the re-accessing of lost innocence and lost joy. For others it is a nightmare ending in destruction. What I say is not true only on a spiritual, evanescent level. It is going to be taking place in a physical form as well. Your world is ending. Your world is beginning. In these next few years, very few years, this division of consciousness, this polarization of energies will climax finally in a true separation. The end of history, the end of karma, the beginning of a very new kind of existence. Those who, in their paroxysms of fear, bring civilization crashing round their heads, provoke a physical ending of the planet, the old energy. I understand this is difficult to grasp. Is there going to be a day where you feel and see and observe the separation of one planet from another? In a way, yes. There are some factors that I am not to explain yet. Your consciousness, your expanding consciousness, your expanding awareness, your growing wisdom, your quickening intuition will bring you to a place of understanding the nature of this ending and beginning as it affects all of humanity and as it affects the earth itself. It can be likened to your own struggle. Partially internal, partially external. Great internal changes leading to great and complementary external changes. Changing jobs, changing friends, changing locations, ending old destructive relationships, ending old destructive patterns. These are all real-world accomplishments. And it will be just as real-world and just as material a series of changes that will come upon humanity as a whole and the earth as its home. Alpha and Omega. In the next 2 years, for the next 2 years, you're still going to be acutely conscious of the energetic changes that are taking place. Remember, I've said you're growing much more sensitive to energy changes as your own vibrations are refined. All matter is energy. You are energy. You respond when other energies enter and when present energies change. Humanity has been dominated by fear for a long time. Love has always, in human history, been a paler companion to that black turbulence of darkness and fear. In this time of polarization, the energy of fear is growing exponentially. You see it on the local level, on the national level, on the international level. You see old racial and national antagonisms, religious antagonisms, rising to a fever pitch as this age ends. You see those who are lost from their own souls behave in a soulless manner, without conscience, without compunction, killing, raping. You see a society flaccid and weak in their lack of understanding, lack of commitment, lack of faith, crumbling under the onslaught of socio-psychopaths as the world goes increasingly mad. But I speak of polarization. The entry into your systems, all of those who chose in many languages and in many terms, many ways, to follow a spiritual path of transcendence and transformation, all of those receiving what I choose to call the Christ energy because of the culture in which I am operating. But it is the energy of perfect love, the energy of wholeness. It is the energy of God. You have, in these past 2,000 years, through as many lives as was necessary, have followed the journey of Christ to its conclusion with the death of the ego and to its magnificent immortality with the rebirth within the same flesh that came into this world haunted by fears. The entry of Christ energy into all of those preparing the way, who have prepared the way for it, has been revolutionary within each life, but it has been intensely personal, seldom commented upon in the general populace. They don't know about it because they're not feeling it. They don't know about it because you who are experiencing it are not organized into a church or into parties or into any recognizable human political social form. You come from wealth and you come from poverty and you come from the middle class and you come from worker and you come from the rich and you come from all races and all religious backgrounds, unidentifiable to the wider society, as you only gradually become aware of each other on a personal level. I have said to you that as you receive this Christ energy, the energy of wholeness and completeness, you are triggering a mechanism that connects you psychically and spiritually with all others who are going through the same process. You don't need to create a political party or a church. It is not in your nature and it is not in your need. You are connecting in a far deeper and, in the long run, far more powerful way. You are becoming as one. Gradually enough for you to be able to tolerate such a revolutionary, evolutionary change. The changes that are taking place within you will soon be felt more powerfully upon the earth. Love is more powerful than fear. For a very simple reason. Love is real and based upon the energy of God. Fear is an illusion and based on the energy of frightened souls. Your losing your fear makes room for all of that Christ energy to enter you, for you to assimilate it, for you to enact in your life the changes it provokes. You are only at the beginning of that journey, a journey that will occupy you for 1,000 years beyond this time. What you are experiencing is unique in human history. What you are experiencing will revolutionize all human institutions. What you are experiencing will heal you and your relationship with the planet. Will heal you and your relationship with all races. Will heal you and your relationship with the opposite sex. When you truly know each other at this deep spiritual level, you see that in each other's eyes you find yourselves. And since you have come to peace with yourself, learn to love and forgive yourself, so you learn to love and to forgive all of those you encounter, as this essence of oneness becomes finally the reality of humanity. But in this short run, in this time of polarization, the energy of fear seems overwhelming. You can only survive and triumph because the energy that you are breathing in, so to speak, with every breath, is so much more powerful. Because your faith, even though you feel it weak at times, is so much more powerful than fear. And so while you are surrounded by the darkness, the increasing blackness of fear magnified 1,000,000 times, the intensity of the light within you and the light that you share will help you to find your way through the crumbling, shuddering collapse of that which you have known. You are protected. There's no other way to say it. It's a part of the bargain. It's not all one way, though. It's felt that way for you for many times. It's well, it's just faith, 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 sacrifice, 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 patience, 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 wait, 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 frustration, and when is it? What's the other side of the deal? The other side of the deal is coming into reality now. You're beginning to feel it in your lives and in yourselves. And the other side of the deal is so much more powerful than anything you have ever experienced, that indeed humanity has ever experienced, that it protects you with the power of God from the evil, the face of fear, that threatens to engulf you. Again, I say to you, have no fear. You truly have nothing left to fear. There is nothing left to fear. All you have now is the fading memory of what had haunted you and blocked you and frustrated you, that had caused you despair and falling away from love and faith. It's all gone. You've worked your way through it. You've released it. Yes, of course you're still in process. But the hump, you have passed it. Now all negative fades from you. It has no further strength. It may cling with ghostly hands, but soon falls away. In its place is a power, the like of which you cannot as yet imagine. That's why I've stressed again and again, as you change and as you grow, and as you feel your power coming back to you, be bold, be bold, be bold. Reach beyond your grasp. You cannot understand the great power that is at your beck and call. You will believe in it more as time goes on. You will strengthen yourself more through spiritual exercise. And soon you will be masters of understanding. Soon you will be the inheritors, the aware inheritors of all of that strength, all of that power. In the meantime, act it out as though you believe it. You will find very quickly confirmation after confirmation. Every risk, quote unquote, that you take will be rewarded. Every fear that you have had will be confounded. You are coming into a position now where you can be in control of your health, of your vitality, of your alertness, of all things relating to the self as the integration of body, mind, and spirit continues apace. Gradually then, moving outward from the self, you find that your connection with others on this journey is stronger and clearer, that there is a psychic bond. And I cannot emphasize too much the power of this psychic bond, this oneness that you are uncovering. Here you are, apparently separate individuals, and you discover these threads of energy that tie you immutably, inevitably, eternally to each other. One mind, one heart, one soul, one spirit, with many faces. That will become more real to you as time goes on. You will find yourself unconsciously drawing to you others on this same journey into freedom and wholeness. You will be connecting with them at a deeper level than you've ever connected with other human beings. Many of you in this process, moving toward your own wholeness, many of you who were not united with others in a relationship, who are also on that journey, have parted company with them. Whether friends, romantic partners, family, what have you. You have needed to part from them. You could not be any more connected to those who were not of your essence. They are not damned, they are not doomed, they are not less than you. It is simply not their time. Some will come later in this life to awareness. Some will not. Some will choose another life to find their way home. I emphasize to you your power as a group. The age that is coming is going to emphasize that group awareness, that group action, the teamwork, the collective energy of the race. It is going to empower you to change the earth and to move out among the stars. That is the long vision, the long view, the destiny. In this short range, between 1991 and 1997, there is going to be a powerful schism taking place, of which you will at first be aware of as a sense. I want to phrase this carefully, because I know that many of you have been going for the last several months very confused and being aware of this, of apparently warring energies coming into your world and into yourself. So it is not a sense of confusion, but perhaps I should say a sense of disorientation that may come to you several times a day, that you may be subliminally aware of all of the time, that you may only notice occasionally, depending on your own personal nature, but that is almost a dreamlike sense of discontinuity. It is your sensing, your intuitive perception of the division that is taking place, of this masked illusionary power of fear so near to you and yet not touching you, and this enormous white, clean, clear, powerful energy of love that is filling you. You'll get used to it, and finally you will be so distant from your memories of fear that that sense of disorientation will pass, and you will be wholly a part of the new earth and the new humanity. Doesn't matter if buildings are falling down around you and people are leaping out of windows. Doesn't matter that the world is going mad with fear. It will not touch you. Now it will only touch you, as I say, first because you still are tied in memory to the old world and to the old self, and you read the paper, and you see the news on television, and you see the world around you in its disintegration, and you have a greater perspective on what is going on than the average person on the street. But it is nonetheless disquieting, because you were so recently a part of that consciousness, that limited, fear-dwelling consciousness. As you move forward in your own process and in your own journey, through many factors, energetic and through manifestation of your own desires and dreams, gradually you move away, and that memory of that old reality no longer is a part of you. But it's unreasonable to expect it to instantly vanish. This is a very difficult time. No human beings have ever experienced what you are experiencing. You may experience a great change of consciousness from one life to another as you explore various aspects of your collective nature. But you've never experienced coming into the world in a physical form and going through this death and rebirth and retaining that physical form and those memories. It's extremely disorienting, extremely disquieting, until you've passed this time of change where the change is happening all around you and within you. You're over the hump, as I say. You've gone through the worst of it. The only reason I bring it up now is that it's not there for you to fear anymore. That you're now capable, your consciousness has expanded to the point where you're now capable of at least vaguely understanding what I'm talking about. This is a magnificent time. And you need to repeat that to yourself several times a day, and repeat it to each other, and celebrate all of your triumphs individually and collectively, and develop your networks of connection with other rebirthing souls, because all around you is going to be the distraction of this dying, old, fear-ridden humanity. Now, what's it going to mean in practical terms? Just what I've said. This is a time of dreams come true for you. That which you have long desired is now obtainable to you. You will only choose what is best for you, what is appropriate for you. You have let go of the confusion where you might make wrong choices. Wrong choices are always dictated by some form of fear, some form of separation from God, some form of ego sickness. You're moving very well through that. Better than you think. Because you're still thinking with that old noggin. And the Christ energy expressing itself in that intuitive, wise fashion is still early in its integration. Soon ego, spirit, and flesh will be perfectly harmonized and perfectly balanced. And you will no longer be prey to the memories of the past. You will have truly changed. This is a change I have to emphasize this again and again because it's so difficult for you to see the enormity of it. This is, you're changing species in a sense. You are no longer Homo sapien. You are triune human beings. It's a totally different thing, taking place in one generation. In its essence, of course, it continues and grows as the time goes on. But you're the pioneers. You're the pilgrims. You're the first ones to walk this trail. Your brothers and your sisters and your children and your friends and so forth may follow you. But you've got to mark out the way. It's like being the eldest child. You've got to try everything first, without a model to go by. It's a glorious time, but it can be very unnerving in its early stages. So, what's this going to mean to you? You are going to be manifesting your dreams in the way that is perfect for you. You're going to be drawing to you, if you desire, a mate for your heart and for your life. A mate of equality and understanding. You would not marry a gorilla or a Neanderthal. Those who are drawn to you and you to them will be of this new race. This is a promise. Now, there may be reasons, very valid reasons, why you choose not to have this partnership, but in most cases it's going to take place, period. Maybe next week, maybe next year, maybe 2-3 years down the line. It's going to take place. You will be equally connected as a part of the expansion of consciousness. Your desires, not your selfish ego wants, but your true needs and highest desires will all manifest. They cannot help but manifest as you become integrated into the body of God. Perfection is a part of that wholeness. In the world, what you are seeing now will become ever more exaggerated. I talked about the sociopaths and the psychopaths that kill and maim and do so without conscience as an animal would. In reaction to that, many others, just as claimed by fear, will respond with a great counter-reaction, just as psychopathic in its way, having nothing to do with healing and forgiveness and love and transcendence or any of that, having everything to do with fear and revenge, with the desire to control as the world goes out of control. And so you're going to have the irresistible force coming in contact with the immovable object. You're going to have increasingly totalitarian governments, increasingly totalitarian behavior, as those frozen into place struggle with those who are anarchic. You will not be harmed. You will not be affected negatively by this in your own life. You are protected. It doesn't mean that you move off to an island where no one touches you. It means that you triumph. That in the midst of the storm, you are an islet of peace. That no damage can come to you. That challenges will only strengthen you. When I speak of joy, I speak of joy unrestrained. You say, well, how can I be joyful when all about me such horrible injustices, such terrible disasters are taking place? Because you will understand increasingly that what you are seeing and hearing is illusion. It is the noisy death of an illusion. It is people wedded to fear, killing each other out of fear, building that wall of fear by their fear. It will not damage you. You will see the increasing destruction of international agreements and of the international monetary structure. Again, through the products of fear, dishonesty, self-protection, distrust. All of these will combine with the intrinsic inequity of the world systems of government and finance. They will collapse as a result of this fear. The wars that you are seeing, the divisions, ancient divisions, coming up now, most noticeably in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, will increase. The struggle between Muslims and Christians and others will increase. This is the beginning of what the Bible spoke of as Armageddon. Doesn't matter what religion you are. The religions all have prophetic writings that all agree when you begin to see the commonality beneath the outer differences. This is the end and the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega. Final struggle. You read about it already, the rebuilding, the planned rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Well, you're not going to rebuild that temple without destroying a major Muslim symbol. Cannot do it. The Dome of the Rock. The ingathering of the tribes of Israel. All foretold, all occurring. The various forms of apparent destruction of the earth itself. 10, 20 years ago, did you see all these volcanoes and all these earthquakes? The bizarre weather patterns? The extremes of drought? No, you did not. They've always been present here or there as a part of the fear structure. But now the fear structure is magnified. Now is the death of the old earth and the old humanity. Humanity has raped the earth, and the earth is dying. The triunity is healing, and healing the earth, and that earth will live. Death, birth, one. Nothing dies. Everything transforms. Therefore, the death itself must be illusion. Therefore, that aspect of the world, that dimension of the world that I have said is dying, is an illusion dying. A belief structure dying. But when so many have breathed life into illusion, it stands as though it is real, full of the borrowed and coerced power of envy and anger and jealousy and rage that have been the human lot. It is important for you, in maintaining your balance in this terribly unbalanced time, to move within yourself at regular intervals, to become calm as a quiet lake, to call upon your abilities given to you by a God who shares, to triumph over all adversity. You will be called upon by many to give aid, to give help, to give advice. And you'll know through that magnified intuition that is the gift of the Christ energy, you'll know where to open your hand, where to reach out, where to sadly turn away, how to give the gifts that you have to give, but never be taken from. At the beginning, you hear words like this, you say, me? I'm going to be so wise, I'm going to be so intuitive, I'm part of the new birth, the new reality. I'm going to survive all this chaos and destruction. Believe in yourself now in faith. The faith will be rewarded with confirmation of your strength and of your wisdom and of your intuition. That which you feel in small measure now will flood in to you as the days pass. There is an acceleration of events. I called it a long time ago, a telescoping of time. If it seems to you that time is fleeing faster and faster, it is. The clocks still seem to say that 24 hours have passed. The 24 hours on a clock is just a symbol. Time itself is hurtling faster and faster as the intensity of this powerful break in continuity in this dimension takes place. Ride the wave. Don't fight for more time, for less time. Be the river. Do not be a part of the tumult and screaming and agony that will increasingly surround you. It's not yours. As you have learned not to take upon yourself responsibility, untoward, inappropriate responsibility for other people, for issues that are not yours. As you have learned not to be invaded, not to be taken advantage of. As you have learned to celebrate your wholeness, your strength, and your power. All that you have learned is going to pay off now. Others may look at you and say, how could you be so calm when everything is breaking apart? And you won't be able to tell them because they won't understand. Because they're committed to identifying with that breaking apart. Even more now than when it was first said, it is true that you have nothing to fear but fear itself, and you have immunized yourself against fear. Therefore, you have nothing to fear. I open for questions.
Plautus, as these dichotomies occur and the earth splits, you said that there's going to be physical destruction of the earth. Is that one reality? It
yes.
Is actually
by the time that happens, let us use an extreme example and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but this may make it somewhat clearer. Let us say that the earth would be destroyed by a nuclear holocaust. Boom! At that moment of disintegration, that would also be the moment of birth for the whole earth. You know, I say it, and it sounds too science fiction, too fantasy. What does this mean? How can this be? This is foreign to our experience. This doesn't fit into our rationality and our sense of logic. It sounds like a fantasy, somebody's fanciful idea of endings and beginnings. And I say to you, you'll understand it when it happens. And if that is an inadequate thing to say, so it must be, because you've never experienced anything like it and therefore cannot imagine it. Yet it happens all the time. And I'll tell you where it happens. Black holes. What's a black hole in space? It is exactly what is taking place, preparing to take place on Earth itself. The physical destruction of Earth in this reality, in this dimension, creates, how can I explain this, a sort of turning inside out. It is as if you went through that black hole and discovered another universe. Yes. And so that star that imploded upon itself until it could no longer exist under the laws of this dimension universe, appeared to be destroyed, but in fact, both were destroyed at the level of this dimension and this understanding and this universe, but was born in that same moment in a new dimension and a new universe. How are you going to feel that here? Now, the example that I give you, of course, you think, well, I'll certainly feel that. But that's not how you're going to experience it. You're not going to, well, if you experience it that way, you'd be dead along with everybody else. You're going to experience the birth and not the death, because you have already gone through the death, accepted the grace that requires no further death. That's as much as I can tell you about that now. There's more, but not yet.
So you actually probably won't witness that destruction then?
Yes and no. Yes and no. By the time this takes place, your own comprehension will have grown to a point where you will be able to comprehend what is taking place and understand that that's what's going on now. So it's not like you won't notice it. I can't go any further than that now.
It reminds me of a program that I saw in Mount St. Helens where a new life came when people didn't interfere with the rebirth. It came about better than when people were trying to help it along.
Yes. There are, I've said this many times, there are midwives to this process. In your own case, guides, human, seen and unseen, guides from the wider reality that have helped you through this process of your own death and rebirth. I've said also that there are midwives, and here we get into the ETs and aliens and that sort of thing. There are midwives to this process from this universe, from the wider universe, and some that are projecting consciousness. It's interesting, you see, 100 or so years ago, there was really no concept of science fiction or fantasy. There would be occasional visionaries who would have visions that might seem a bit like that. But the rise of science fiction, of these kind of concepts, precisely accompanies the rise of comprehension, the expansion of consciousness, the visions, the shadow of things to come, things not yet fully seen, the anticipation, the partial visions. And so naturally you're going to hear these things say, well, it sounds like science fiction. But actually science fiction has arisen because of these changes.
Would you care to comment on the concept that's been put forth that there has been an agreement between Russia and the United States, and the United States, great technology, much greater than has told of. In other words, the walk on the moon was just a farce in comparison to the technology. Evidently, the idea is that this technology is being experimented with and put to use on the other side of the moon, and that the United States and Russia actually have technology to move much as the aliens seem to be able to move.
No. I'll just state it point blank. No, that's not true. What you're experiencing here, and gives rise to rumors like that, is partly the fear energy, which always sees subplots where none exist. But also it is a leaking through, again, when I say the shadow of things not yet in form, the gradual awareness that there is much, much greater power available than has ever been experienced before. And that sensing, plus the onrushing of events of apparent disaster in all parts of the planet, leads to fantasies both optimistic and paranoid regarding cooperation or involvement between aliens and Earth governments and so forth. Well, I'll say one thing in the first place. There isn't an alien worth his salt capable of coming to Earth who's going to have the slightest thing to do with any existing Earth government. That's the last place that any extraterrestrial would go for understanding, agreement, or what have you. The extraterrestrial life is not like what you see in Flash Gordon or Star Wars or so forth. When a planet, a people, is ready to expand into the physical universe off of their home planet. When they're preparing that, well, you're doing it, and you've got the equivalent of sort of balloon technology or steam engine technology, and so you put off to the moon, but and send probes out among the planets and stars. But that technology is just an indication that you are preparing to join the community, the wider community. Now, you don't join that wider community if you are the evil empire. You don't become a part of that, because this is a spiritual universe, the whole damn thing. And as you grow spiritually, as you grow in your oneness and awareness of God, so you are able then to interact with other races, other beings, other missions, but all with the common ground that they have graduated out of whatever the form of fear, whatever the form of blockage was in their particular civilization, their particular beginnings. And so you, human beings, the triune beings, will be welcomed into that community when you're ready. In the midst of your fear, your monkey ingenuity has created the ability to make a short hop into space under very limited conditions and at a very slow speed. But that's enough to signal, we're getting ready here. You know, the mind has grown. Look what we can do with our minds. And so it's time then for the leavening of the spirit, for that universal God spirit to enter into the monkey mind and create from that a new being capable and qualified to travel among the stars. So, no, don't give any energy to that sort of thing. I said in a lecture some years ago, in fact, one of the last lectures I gave before a hiatus, a lecture on fraud and foolishness in the New Age. And there's, my goodness, 90%, I'd say, of that which labels itself the New Age is sheer nonsense. It's science fiction writ large. It's ego-confusing hints that have gone through. It is the detritus of those struggling to understand what is taking place under their feet and in their lives. And by this, I do not condemn individuals, but rather say that because of human history, because of the nature of humanity as it has existed, the form has been deeply flawed and deeply overlaid with imagination and fantasy and ego desires and this and that and the other thing. And it's not a condemnation to say that, it's simply an observation that that's the way things begin now. So at any rate, that's not true. It's not a concern. Yes.
Partners you were talking about. I have met someone, and you said in a previous meeting that this meeting with Curtis was something that was going to just take place and there wouldn't be probably more coming out of it. It was what it was.
Yes.
I've written him a letter, and I'm still thinking about him.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I say that's fine, and I don't mean to just blow it off as though it were nothing, but the point is here, whether it is Curtis by name, Curtis that individual, or someone else by some other name, it is a level of development that you have reached that there is no reason, and I would be horrified if you did not pursue your interests simply because Plautus made a statement that might indicate that whatever this mission is between the two of you, that it will come and go. Now, I've confessed this before, but I'll confess it again to you, that there have been many times over the last 10 or 11 years that I've been channeling that I have not told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The truth, yes, but not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. That it is, and you could call it manipulation, and I'll say yes, I'll accept that definition, because there are distances you have to travel that, because of previous conditioning, you would limit yourself terribly from doing. You are learning about being independent, free, and trusting your own judgment, trusting your wisdom, trusting your intuition. And generally that means trusting it against well-meant advice from others, trusting it against not so well-meant advice from others, trusting it against jealousy, trusting it against past beliefs, trusting it against all sorts of obstacles. It's the building of faith. And if this fellow called Plautus, who says some things you like and some things you don't understand and some things you wonder about, if this fellow can stop you in that process of independent choice, then you need to start at the beginning. So I would encourage you, and I've said this many times, whatever I say, I try to give you the best help that I can within the context of where you are in your development, what you need to find out. Now, there are times from time to time when I'll twirl you around and point you in the opposite direction, so that in order to reach your goal, you go around the world to get there. You see, because it's necessary, and you wouldn't do it, because you wouldn't be aware of it, unless I twirled you around. Now, generally, I want to reassure you, generally I don't need to do that. Generally I can be absolutely straight and as literal with you as I can manage. But I want to say in this point particularly, if ever I say, or anyone says, something to you about your journey and about your path and about your choices and about your desires, and you don't like it and you don't want it, don't pay any attention to it. Go your way. Trust your judgment. It may be that you'll go your way and you'll trust your judgment and you'll explore this and you'll say, well, I guess I don't really want that after all. It's really not what I thought it was going to be. But you will have learned so much in your exploration that could not be counted as time wasted. To thine own self be true. Know thyself. All your life and all your lives you have listened and obeyed and reacted against others. I want you to do this. Well, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do this instead, the exact opposite. I want you to do this or I'll kill you. Well, all right, I'll do this, but only because you'll kill me. You've followed all sorts of advice, well-meant and dictatorial. Now you're learning to follow what you hear in your heart. And you're not too clear yet on what that sounds like. So when you're interested in following something up, follow it up. Trust yourself. Yes?
Comment on my energy connection with Peter Himmelman.
Yes, I have to speak first in a little bit broader context, that relating to what I've said about your growing intuition, your growing sensitivity to vibrations, your growing psychic communion with others. So much of it is under the surface now. The ego mind hasn't quite accepted how to understand it, how to translate all of the information that it is getting from sources it hadn't previously acknowledged existed. So part of that awareness, part of that connection that you feel with this individual is directly attributable to that, to the fact that there is a commonality of spirit that has to do with the transformation that you are feeling and reacting to. All right, now that's part of it. Part of it is that familiarity that I spoke of earlier that you're going to be feeling more and more regarding more and more people. Now, as to personal past life involvement, yes, there is that too. And you spent 40-some years together, practically side by side, and never said a word. Never said a word. Because you were brothers, and with a vow of silence. Now, I want you to take a moment and imagine that you live side by side with a small group of individuals whom you do not speak to and who do not speak to you. You get to know those people on an entirely different level than you ever get to know anyone under normal human conditions. There are the same human strifes and differences, but because you cannot argue, because you cannot discuss, you are developing your unspoken psychic, spiritual, psychic, emotional connections with those with whom you share this vow of silence. And so, now, in the past, in human life, you had to take a vow like that in order to experience that sort of knowledge, knowing of another person. Now you're coming into the ability to know people at that intuitive, psychic level, and you can talk at the same time. But it wasn't true in the past. And so there is a deep knowledge and understanding of each other at that silent level. Nothing to say that you can't externalize that connection in this life. I think you probably will, in fact.
Way of putting on that, I just feel that connection, especially the shared transformation process.
Yes.
It's just nice to have that support.
Yes, and you public figures, you're going to be able to recognize that even over the television waves through the television set. You're going to know one from another, and whether you've translated it as a special glow or you're going to try, the mind's going to try to say, well, it's something I'm seeing, but it's really something you're sensing. And while, of course, what is heard and what is seen go into it, it's really the knowledge of the heart. Ah, here's a brother, here's a sister.
I could ask the same kind of question. What did you ask? What was the term?
What was the energy connection?
Okay, I'd like to know the energy connection between myself and the veterinarian I've been having with my dog. His name is Bill Winter.
Yes, this is another, again, I could almost repeat part of what I told her, that energetic level. You are connecting with another individual who is also in the transformation process. And it's it's like you both belong to the same lodge, and you know the same secret handshake, and you're sharing hidden knowledge. But the lodge that you belong to is the lodge of the new triune humanity, and there isn't much of a language yet to discuss that or even acknowledge that in. So you are feeling that spiritual connection. Now let me see if there's a past life relationship here. Yes, and you're going to need to counter it if you want to have an appropriate, equal relationship with this individual, because you were a sort of disciple of his in a past life. This is a man who is in his process of transformation, been working through a great many ego struggles. A man who has come out of lives of great power and some lives of abuse of power. A man who has been a leader and is, particularly, nothing is more seductive to the ego than to be a spiritual leader, a religious leader. There's nothing like worship for turning your head. And when you gather around you people who do not question you but follow you blindly, that's very bad for you, well, for both the follower and the followed. And it's a lot to come back from. And he's attracting to himself in this life a number of people from other lives of his who have been followers and disciples and that sort of hero-worshipping kind of relationship in order to help him relate at an equal level and to help them overcome that distance of worshipfulness. So the more everyday your connection with him can become, the more healed it will become, the more equal it will become. So, but be aware of not salaming to him and saying, yes, O Lord, I hear and obey.
Thanks. Can I ask you about a past life connection with Curtis?
Well, it's an interesting thing here. Another life for you as an artist, and a common thing, but very interesting. You sculpted him. Now, so he was a model for you, but in the act of sculpting him from life, it's such a creative act. And you're looking here, and you're creating here, and it is godlike. You're taking the clay and making it human, and here's the human being to prove it. Here's the life force that you are somehow alchemizing as you create the statue of him, the sculpture of him. And it's an interesting level of knowledge of him. Much of it is tactile, and knowing every curve and angle, and knowing him from the outside in. So I think the reason that particular life connection has come up is that your involvement with him is going to involve your knowing him from the inside out, and of his influence upon you being more active than passive. What is more passive than an artist model? Now we see a balancing coming from the model having, I'm picking my words carefully here, I don't want to mislead you and I don't want to give the plot away. The artist model becoming not precisely the artist and you the model. It's not a reversal. It is an enhancement. You have known him, as I say, from the outside in, from building a replica of him in stone. And now in his action with you, it's going to in some way confer life upon you as you conferred life upon the stone. And as you drew from him to create that life, he will draw from you to create new life in you. So.
Should develop connections with people of like minds. I'm finding it hard to do. Like organized religions don't work. Where do you find?
All right, I'm glad you asked that, because you don't need to go out beating the bushes. All you need to do is ask. All you need to do is send out invisible messages, not with desperation, saying, SOS, come this way, but saying, God, I am ready to increase my involvement with other evolving human beings. When you become the river, when you stop fighting to go faster than everybody else, or when you stop listening to your fear that makes you try to slow up, when you become the river, you reach every destination. When you become the river, you become one with the timing of the universe as it interacts with your timing. Therefore, all you have to do is be awake, be alert, live in the moment, live in faith and trust, and walk through the doors that open before you. What you need and what you desire will be there at the moment you need and desire it. Ask, and it shall be given unto you. You don't need to join a church or a club or anything to try to find like-minded individuals. Although some of you may. I don't say you can't do that. But you don't need to.
Could I ask you, I'm in a relationship with my mother. She's in a nursing home, and I think is postponing death because of fear of it. I would like to know in what was the best way for both of us to grow through this experience. And more specifically, right now she's on a drug which helps her sleep at night and is supposed to help depression. I've asked that drug be cut in half, and I still see signs of lack of clarity. Not that her mind process is excellent, but I think it could be better. And I don't know, I hate being in the position of having to decide whether she should be taking a drug or not. And I don't know whether to ask them to cut it again or ask them to eliminate it.
And what is your motive for feeling that it should be cut again or eliminated?
I don't.
Or cut in the first place?
I resist giving people drugs to make them sleep or make them be happy. And yet, if it's going to make things easier for her, then it's fine with me.
Yes. A, she has not been delaying death because she's afraid of dying. There may be on the conscious ego level some disturbance like that, but I see her soul, and that isn't the purpose for her waiting around at all. It has very much to do with you. It has very much to do with an ending of karmic connection, karmic debt, you may call it. It puts you in this position of power. You say you don't want it, but you need to have this power, and you need to deal with it fairly, and you need to deal with it compassionately. You need to deal with it from her point of view. You need to, in your imagination, walk a mile in her shoes so that you make the choice that would be her choice, that would be of greatest benefit to her. And now, while it's not for me to make that choice for you, it is very important that the decisions that you make that touch her life and affect the quality of that life, affect the passage of her time, be sourced in the heart and not in the mind. That be sourced in love and compassion. Not out of what you think best, but out of what you feel, feeling through her feelings. I will say this: we're all chemistry at the human level. Just another word for energy. We're all combinations of energies, and not static, unchanging combinations. As you live, as you grow, from childhood to middle age to old age, your energies are constantly shifting and changing in their balance. You have more of this and less of that, and more of that and less of this. There's a constant shift and a constant change. Do not consider these drugs, as you put it, as being separate, as being additives. The intent and overall the result is to create balance where balance has been lost. Not to create a new thing. They have this foreign thing called a drug, and you pound it in here, and it forces this change. It doesn't do that. It integrates into an energy that has lost that aspect of chemistry energy that needs the rebalancing, whether it's depression or mania or schizophrenia or somebody who can't sleep and needs help to sleep, or somebody who can't wake up and needs help to wake up. Understand this. If you operate through compassion, how does she feel? How would she feel? Is it important that she face life now with clear eyes and no outside involvement? Or is it for her to experience, however imperfectly, because these drugs, these chemical additives, are crude compared to what has been adjusting and changing within the self, because humanity is not yet at the level to perfectly duplicate that. But so you ask yourself, with her eyes and with her feelings, how do I want to feel? And don't worry about whether it's a drug that makes her feel that way, or hypnosis, or a spiritual experience, or what have you. The test, again, I reiterate, the test is for you to respond from your heart out of compassion and love. Then she can go. Yes.
I've been wondering, I guess I want to update on Kirsten and I started writing her a couple notes, and then she wrote me back, and then I wrote her a letter, and it still feels like we're really in different places.
Yes. Give it time. In fact, I would say this isn't even a time for note writing and letter writing and so forth.
I guess partly it was because she showed up at your house, and it's just the way I reacted. It's like,
yes.
I want to find a way to.
Well, I understand, but that's internal. That's something that any number of letters to her isn't going to change whatsoever. You're going to write a letter to yourself, because your response is your responsibility. And but I would say, in terms of getting together and so forth and so on, don't push it. It's not time yet. And I'm not even going to put a finger on when I think it might be time. You'll both feel that when it's appropriate. A period of benign neglect is still called for.
So just with my own feelings for myself.
Yes.
Thanks.
My friend Pat McCann asked me to ask about her financial difficulties and feelings, and also a relationship.
So you're her proxy, is that it?
I'm her proxy,
The image I get dealing with finances is her sort of drowning in spaghetti. That strings and strings and strings and strings and strings. She's making too much of it. Don't tinker so much, I would say to her. Don't try to adjust. Don't try to keep it all in the brain and balance it and juggle it and worry at it and take the strings and tie them into different kinds of knots and bows and so forth. That this is really a time, in terms of financial matters, for transcendence and trust. Letting these snarls work themselves out in the passage of time. That she really gets herself in more difficulty the more energy she puts into the financial picture, because she's a tinkerer. So I'd say let that go. Relationships, does she want to know about an existing relationship or about something coming in?
something coming in.
Well, I have to say this. She's at the beginning of learning to romance herself. And she really has to fall in love with herself before she's going to invite in someone who will fall in love with her and not take advantage of her. If she wants, and of course she does, want a relationship that is mutually beneficial and not another chapter of, hello, I'm a victim, come and victimize me, then she needs really to be focusing her creative attention upon herself and her own development and coming to peace with the war internally. If I were to give a guesstimate based upon present indications, I'd say we're probably talking about another year before there's another relationship. But it's a year that will pass quickly and profitably if she really pays attention to herself, to her issues, and particularly to healing the child within, to self-comfort and nurture. It's too soon. She's too raw to go out in the battle again. She needs more R&R.
Plautus, my son Bob and I seem to have trouble communicating with each other. Could you talk on that?
Bob, is it?
Bob. Mm-hmm.
Give up. What a terrible thing to say. I say give up because as long as you are pursuing, he will scamper just out of reach. If you, and you've all gone in this dance in relationships, you know, the more interest you show and the more you push, the more the other person backs away. Well, it's sort of like that here. That if you relax your anxiety and quit thinking, I want to communicate, I'm somehow going to figure out how to communicate with him, and so forth and so on. If you just back off and say, well, if you don't want to communicate, you say this internally or to him, you say this, well, if you don't want to communicate, fine. When you do, you know my number, you know where I am, or just indicate it. But take the burden off yourself, because as long as you are the suitor, he's going to be the elusive maiden. You see what I'm saying? Give him the space that he requires. He'll come to you. So back off. There's nothing wrong. This is I'm not talking about a situation that needs a deep healing or anything. It's a transition. And for the time, you need to say, let go, let God.
Plautus, is this spiritual transformation process going on constantly at planets throughout the universe?
Yes, not in unison, of course, but each planet, each people, having different needs. There would be no need to duplicate the Earth process. All spirits finally being one. All spirits finally being one with God. These schools that go to all have a different specialization, all have a different reason for being. But within that context, there is always the process of transformation, the process of becoming. So that's a universal. Everyone at whatever species they are, every sentient being is on a spiritual path, on a spiritual journey.
Does this mean that anybody coming into physical life has to go through this process of living through fear, getting enveloped by it, and then having to release it?
You mean of other planets as well as humanity?
Yes.
Oh dear, how do I say this? All beings have all experiences, finally. So that which you call David, and I call James, that's what you call David, goes through a certain kind of experience here. And in other lives on Earth as a human being, goes through all sorts of experiences. But that being that you call David here may be called Blah, in some other world, and going through different experiences, understandings, journeys, missions in other parts of the universe. Now, I'm not going to get into the simultaneity of events because it's far too confusing.
I'm just wondering if it's necessary to go through so much pain to get into
yes.
soul growth.
Yes. Pain is another aspect of fear. Pain is what you create. Pain is an illusion that you disperse. But the journey through pain is what refines the spirit and expands wisdom, understanding, compassion. So you go through what you regard the negative experience as pain for the very positive result of that process. It's while you're buried there, you say, this hurts. Then you get through and you look back and you say, and that's when you say, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
I've been getting ready to put my condo up on the market and sort of release myself from it. And this old family friend, Joe,
Yes.
Belkin, we've had a really hard time reaching each other. He was going to sort of check out all my findings, and then I was going to call a realtor, and I'm getting ready to call this realtor, and I want to ask you about a name.
At first,
Yeah.
everything is timing. So don't grow impatient if you had trouble getting a hold and connecting and so forth, because that was only so that you would ultimately choose the right time. I'll answer your question about the realtor, but I'll say that timing is more important than whatever individual you choose will be the right individual if the timing is right. And I would say that if you were to plan putting this on the market toward the end of the month, the last week of the month, that would be appropriate.
We started talking about this in March, and you said something about July it would be sold, and
well, you know, I'm way off often about timing because you have free will, but about time, but not about timing. And in terms of timing of putting this on the market, looking at it now, I would say, and I'll tell you the reason is that there's an eclipse in July 26th in Aquarius, and eclipsing out previous conditions. And I think that that time would be the most providential for you to say, I'm done with this. You say.
Yeah, it's sure getting close. Then the other thing is I've asked my friend Nancy if she would come and share my place with me while it's being sold, and we're doing this little back and forth number.
Now this is the one that you are going to be sharing the studio with. I would say don't press this. Too much closeness can be as disastrous as too little. To maintain balance and equality, you are better at this stage, you're better off focusing about your common desire to share the studio. Don't push the other. I'm going to draw tonight's reading to a close and thank you all for your attention and bid you Godspeed as your triunity proceeds apace.